There we go. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Research Lounge, celebrating Black History Month. My name is Kate Frost, and for want of a better phrase, I will be your host for this evening. So you'll be hearing for a little bit from me. But I will say I'm probably the least interesting of our speakers tonight. So I'm the head of patient and public involvement and engagement in research innovation at Nottingham University Hospitals. And tonight we are celebrating Black History Month, and I'll also cover the concept of the Research Lounge. So this is conversations, so the opportunity for the public to come together with our researchers to discuss topics of interest, share the latest research findings and new research areas. And this month we really wanted to celebrate Black History Month. For some, this is a time of reflection and celebration of the contributions of Black people, and others it's looking ahead at what needs to be done in and for Black communities in society. So we've been kindly joined by three speakers tonight, that is Tony, Salome and Joy, who I will also introduce as we get into things. All of them are hoping to raise awareness and celebrate Black colleagues' innovations and projects which are aiming to increase the understanding into health inequalities and barriers to research participation from ethnic minorities. So I'm very excited to have them with us tonight, and I hope that we can all learn from each other and take some of the inspiring topics of discussion forward in our lives and work. A little bit of practicalities about the Research Lounge. So if you hover your mouse over the bottom, you'll be able to see the little microphone. That is how you mute and unmute yourself. Please do come in verbally to ask a question. But if you would prefer, there is a discussion box, much like how chat works in Zoom. So if you click on discussions, I'll just type in there now. So you can pose questions in here and we will respond to them either in the chats or one of our presenters will respond verbally. Next to that is how you turn your video on and off. And if you would like to raise a question, then you can use your little raise hand emoji as I've just done there, and we'll be able to come around to you in order. And press it again to lower it. As I've mentioned, our ethos for all of our research lounges is that no question is a silly question. If you're thinking it, I guarantee everyone else is, and probably definitely me. And this is all about starting and sparking those interesting and insightful conversations. So I really do encourage everyone to engage with us this evening. So that's about it from me. I think maybe we should get into the more interesting stuff. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I will introduce our first speaker. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my camera was off. Hello. This is me. So I'll introduce my first speaker, which is Tony. Hi, Tony. Hey, giving us a wave. So Tony's a nurse at Queen's Medical Centre in the emergency department. His passion for research has led to him applying for a research project exploring where minority ethnic groups get healthcare information, specifically looking at COVID-19. So I'm going to hand over to Tony for our first speaker slot. And I just want to thank you again for joining us this evening and sharing your work with us. Oh, you just on mute. I know it's going to happen to someone.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. So my name is Tony Ndongo. I work at QMC, Queen's Medical Center. I'm a nurse by training. That's enough about myself. So I'm just glad I have this opportunity to share some of the things that I'm doing, basically involving in my research work. So the idea behind this presentation is not necessarily to bombard you with facts and this is what we found. It's more of what can we learn, what can we extrapolate from all this? What does this all mean to you? Because yes, it's important to know these facts and figures because they do mean something and they're relevant. But for me, it was more important to what does this mean to me as a healthcare provider? Because I am a healthcare worker and I'm also Black. I'm also an ethnic minority. So it's for me, it was a passion project, if you may, because we all fit in somewhere. If we all fit in somewhere. So basically, I was just trying to find a space where I can fit in and potentially contribute. So with that being said, I will start my screen share and we can have this discussion. Like I said, it's more of a discussion. It's a full research project, so I might not be. I only have 10 minutes to talk about it, so I might not necessarily go into specific deeper details, but I'll give you a scheme of things, just a rough understanding, a rough idea of a few slides, and then we can have the conversation from there. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Just not in full screen mode at the moment.
Okay. How about?
Perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so basically, our project, and I say our because I didn't do it by myself. There was a whole team involved in this work. So our project was exploring health information seeking among ethnic minorities, among ethnic groups in the UK. So that was the whole that was the umbrella topic. But again, as we go on, you'll see how it revolved into one community. So anyway, ethnicity is complex. It's defined by many things, but it's an intricate essence of what shared similarity. So in some instances, it's about our shared genetic makeup. So just because I have my skin is more melanated, so we are automatically black, but that doesn't make us equal. So there's black African, there's black Caribbean, both black people, very different. There's also behavioral patterns. So we might be Africans, once Egyptian, once South African, both African, very different. Social contracts and cultural identities. So basically, ethnicity is a very complex issue, and it's self-defined. So ethnic inequalities in healthcare are not necessarily something new. They've been observed at all stages. In childhood, low birth weight asthma, childhood asthma, and childhood obesity. In adulthood, hypertension, diabetes, other self-rated measures of health. All these are skewed against people of color, people of ethnic minorities. So again, this is something that has existed for a while, and it's very well documented by research. So again, at the end of 2019, the whole globe went into a pandemic. But this pandemic, as you would expect a pandemic to affect everyone equally, because it was something new that we'd never experienced before. Some communities, some ethnicities were affected differently compared to others. So there is a lot of evidence that showed my ethnic minority groups in the UK have been at high risk of death from COVID. Not just death, but higher risk of poor clinical outcomes, higher incidences of critical care admissions, and just basically poorer outcomes compared to other ethnicities. So, and as the pandemic has gone on, we're in a stage I like to say we're in the rear end of the pandemic, because we're not necessarily off of it yet. So the COVID-19 pandemic vaccine has been heralded as a key to ending the pandemic. But despite this evidence, despite the evidence of Black and ethnic minorities being worstly affected by COVID-19 as a disease, there is further evidence that shows that the vaccine uptake by this community has been substantially lower. And maybe uptake is not the right word. I think it's both uptake and delivery as well. So some hypothesized contributors, what has been thought. So there is a lot of a lot of I don't want to call it speculation, but there's a lot of factors that have been given as contributing to this. So limited social support, lower health literacy, lower social economic status, higher prevalence of ill health, sense of disempowerment, marginalization. There's also genetic predispositions to certain diseases. For example, heart disease and hypertension are higher in Black and ethnic minorities compared, let's say, to white population. So data from the UK identifies basically around the around the COVID period, data identified confusing and conflicting information as contributors to the vaccine hesitancy and refusal. So because of the because of the conflicting and confusing information, we thought about what can we do about it. So what can we investigate further. So we went the health information route. So health information is a very important factor in decision making, not only does it improve our health literacy, but it also empowers us to make informed decision. And again, it's a very complex topic, and it remains largely unaddressed in ethnic minorities. So, because we have a lot of subjective beliefs, perception, social processes, and norms of all these communities, we have different. For example, and by that I mean, for example, you have, um, like I said, for example, two black people. There is one black African. There is one black Caribbean. Both very different in way of thought, very different social processes, very different norms. All these communities are different. Let's say you have two Asian, one is Southeast Asian, one is Indian Asian. So again, very different from religion to beliefs to everything. And the way we think, the way we see our perspective basically affect how we utilize health information given to us. So we conducted a pilot study, and the reason why we call it a pilot study because we are not done with this yet. We are hoping to take it further. So we conducted an exploratory investigation of health information from one specific Black ethnic group, which is the Black African. So our main objective of this study was to generate an understanding of patterns, practices, and processes related to health information seeking, and to identify potential measures that prioritize health needs of these communities. So we used qualitative methods. So for this pilot study, we had 6 participants, all Black Africans from Aberdeen, Manchester, Nottingham, London, all of them in the UK, all of whom were over the age of 18 years. Consent and participation to information was provided, and ethical approval was granted by the University of Nottingham. Data was collected using semi-structured interviews. So what did we find? Everything that we found, we bound it into 3 themes. So there was health information access. Access was a big problem. Access was let me not say a big problem, but was an issue as a whole. Some of the popular sources were GP practices, internet and social media, families and friends. Again, we wanted to identify how people verify the information that they have is actually legitimate. So again, health information verification, people trust the healthcare workers, official government website, and verification was thought to be basically how people verify their information was thought to be very ad hoc and very challenging. One participant literally said, "This is more of a trial and error, to be honest with you." But I try and be balanced as possible. So because there is a lot of information, there is a saying that we are in the infodemic. Basically, we have too much information that we know what to do with. So this participant just said, "It's trial and error. I'll hear this, I'll go try it. If it doesn't work, then go back to the drawing board." For some issues to do with health, that's acceptable, but in others, especially more so in issues of life and limb, that, in my opinion, that's not acceptable. And another big thing that we found was a mismatch between expectation and experience. Basically, our participants narrated their lived accounts on their experiences while they were trying to get very specific health information. And there was a lot of different scenario given, but all of them had similarities. Participants felt dismissed or their needs assumed. So I've put in just a few quotes just to show you what this meant, or rather what they put it as. So one participant said, "I had to push for information. So every time I went to the appointments, I myself made sure that I had a list of questions, because if you don't ask, then maybe they won't tell you, or they assume you already know, but you don't." Someone else said, "Because I think the doctors or the pediatric nurses as well just assume that we will know or we would understand, but it's almost as if you have to push for this information to get it." Someone else said, "But the way I felt that GP or the medical practitioner attending to me at that moment in time, they seemed to be quite dismissive of the condition and how it was going, just to say it will go, you don't have to worry." And they thought it was just a small condition, but it wasn't for me. So basically, all our participants have different, there's a whole, we have transcripts of the interviews, and there's quite a lot of repetitive where someone wanted a very specific piece of information, but they went to the doctors, they went to the hospital, but the healthcare provider just assumed this is something they would know. So they didn't either give the information, or they gave it in a complex way that the person didn't understand, or just don't just get over it, it will pass. But as you can see clearly, when you're in a quest for information and someone tends to dismiss what you feel or what you need, is not it doesn't feel good. And the third thing we found was an information void. So basically, respondents mentioned not having all the information required to make informed decisions. More so, of all the people we interviewed, everyone said they did not have they did not have all the information they required to make the informed decision. Let's say about COVID-19, about the COVID-19 vaccines. There was some information, but there was still a lot of unanswered questions. And so some of them did say they took the vaccine because they felt, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. So again, that creates a sort of mistrust of basically, because it creates an issue with trust. Some of the respondents gave information that they thought was accurate, where else it wasn't, and that is an element of misinformation. Because, and that's why we couldn't call this theme misinformation or disinformation, because to them the information they have is all they have. So I can't be, because of my position as a healthcare provider, I'm in a privileged position to know that this is a misinformation. But to someone who doesn't have any other information, to them that's information basically. And again, we couldn't blame them because there's a widespread of misinformation. So sorry. The widespread misinformation is partially contributed to the initial scarcity of information and knowledge about COVID. I'm sure you, at the beginning of the pandemic especially, there was a lot of conflicting information. You know, for example, in terms of how was COVID spread. Initially, it was thought to be contact, then it was droplet, then it was airborne, then it was this, then it was that. Then, masks were only required in hospitals, then it was required everywhere. Then basically there was a lot of confusing and conflicting information, even among scientific circles. So if you can imagine, if you can imagine in the healthcare and in scientific circles, there was scarcity of information. Just imagine how the general public felt. So for them, it was even worse. I'd say it was even worse. So basically, and then we live in an age of social media eras where we have all these influential people, leaders, just going and saying things they're not very conversant with. I remember there was a brief every day, was it every day or every week, about the numbers, and that just seemed to make things, even though they serve the briefings did serve a purpose, but they seemed to make the situation worse for some of the respondents, and all this just influenced the willingness to follow preventive measures. Because at the very beginning of the lockdown was supposed to last a week, then it was into a month, then it ended up being a period of 4 to 5 months, where we'll review at such and such a date, we'll review and such and such, because of the constant going back. Basically, the willingness of people to follow these preventive measures was just, people weren't willing to follow that because it's been changed so many times. So how do we become part of the solution? How do we what are some of the things that we can do to improve this? So as a healthcare provider, I had to approach it from my own perspective. How could I become part of the solution? So again, healthcare workers are considered to be the most influential and trusted sources of health information. So it is important that we pay special attention to the vulnerable and disadvantaged populations, such as the elderly, immigrants, and ethnic minorities. And I'm sure you can all agree with me, information is not valuable if you can't understand it. Right now, I am a nurse by profession. If someone gave me a lot of information about mechanical engineering, that information is as good as useless, because I don't have the basic understanding of how these things work. So it's important that we recognize that different groups have different needs, and some people may require more deeper explanation, because again, we all have a different level of understanding. So, and that can also be achieved by giving a wide range of information. We all have different level of understanding. There's someone, for example, if you're a healthcare worker already, you have a good understanding, so you might not require as much, as opposed to someone, for example, who's lesser informed. Let's say someone who's still struggling with the English language. we live in the UK where the default language is English. That's not everyone's primary language, or rather first language. So for us, for some people, most of the ethnic minorities, this is either their second or their third language. So they still struggle with elements of language. So again, providing a wide range of information about one single topic, be it COVID, be it cancer, be it hypertension, for the different level of understandings will go a long way in improving this. And then another thing that came up was engaging with the religious and community leaders. It is an advantage, first of all, if the information is coming from someone who looks like you. And uh, again, there is well documented evidence, researched evidence that says people are most likely to uh, people from ethnic minority backgrounds are most likely to trust their religious and their community leaders than they are even to trust their doctors. So if we get the right information to these leaders, then they can get it to where it needs to be. And again, they also help in things to do with translation, things to do with better understanding generally. And also, again, as healthcare workers, even as people, as healthcare workers, we need to have this open and transparent communication. I have to be open to being corrected, because this again strengthens aspects of communication. If I'm speaking to I'm Black African and I'm speaking to, let's say, as someone who's Southeast Asian, if I say something inappropriate, I should be open to being corrected and not take offense if someone tells me like what you said or what you how, because sometimes it's not even how what you said, it's what was said and how it was said. If I said something in an offensive manner or something that was offensive, I should be open enough to accept correction. And again, also as healthcare workers, we need to reflect and be considerate of contextual and cultural perspective. For example, if you're giving I work in the emergency department where we meet people of all walks of life. Hypothetically, if I meet someone who's a Jehovah's Witness, they've been involved in a grisly accident and they do need a transfusion. Jehovah's Witnesses do not ascribe to blood transfusion. So I should be respectful of that, and let basically of the context first of all, and the cultural perspective, not just cultural, even religious perspective. Give them the explanation, give them the right information, and tell them if you don't receive this transfusion, then these are the possible outcomes. Again, if I'm talking about to someone who's Catholic about things to do with birth control, again, you need to be respectful of contextual and cultural. Well, I meant to say I need to be considerate of contextual and cultural perspective when speaking to different people from all walks of life. I'm sure, regardless of ethnicity, how we communicate is very important. No one wants to feel disrespected. No one wants their culture to feel like it doesn't matter. So it is important when we put some of these things into context. And as a healthcare worker, I also need to be aware of there is a power dynamic. When I go to the hospital as a patient, the power dynamics do change. Where it's almost implied I have to do what the doctor says, but I might be of a different opinion. I might be, okay, you want me to have surgery, but what are the other alternatives? I don't like surgery is not my. I won't necessarily go in readily to have surgery. Do I have alternatives? But most often than not, you'll find that there is an unspoken power dynamic where the doctor is always right and the patient has to do what the doctor says. We need to be aware of such power dynamics. Things to do with cultural safety. As a healthcare provider, I have to examine my own prejudice. Consciously and subconsciously, I have prejudices. I have things I don't like, whether they be prejudice or just preference. I need to be aware of that and how that impacts the way I deliver care. And then again, things to do with targeted health information rather than generic. What I've come to realize throughout this research work is there is no one shoe fits all. Health information is very, very specific. Again, we are still in the COVID era, so I'll refer to COVID quite a bit. So, for example, if if there's two of us who are going to get the COVID vaccine, I might be concerned about my fertility. Someone else is concerned about blood clots they had there. Someone else is someone else is concerned, is this vaccine halal? Someone else is concerned, does it have any DNA altering? Because my culture and my religion doesn't allow. So there needs to be very, very specific and targeted health information rather than generic information to address the very many specific and very unique needs of people who most of them happen to be ethnic minorities. And that's the end of my small discussion. So I am very much open to questions. And again, I'll give a disclaimer. I don't know everything. So this is going to be a discussion. This is going to be, I'm open to hearing from you as much as you heard from me.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. I mean, you saw the rounds of applause as going around from everyone. So people saw found the reaction buttons there, which is fantastic. And just to echo that, I mean, I've taken 2 pages of notes. So, I mean, thank you so much for sharing this incredible piece of work. And I'm not going to take up any more time because I think it should be questions. And Sarah, you had a question that was very amply timed. Your hand shot up just at the end. So
it's not a question. It's just a comment. As an ethnic, I'm primarily Asian, but I do have a lot of other things thrown in there for good measure. I recently had to have major abdominal surgery at Kingsmill. And it's just supporting Tony in what you were saying about listening as healthcare. I am, like my mother, and apparently quite a few Asian people are, very sensitive to morphine and opiates, particularly the psychotic effects. I told the staff repeatedly, I don't need the full 10 mil Oromorph dose. It will send me loopy. And I had 6 days in hospital out of my face. When I went home, I was using 2.5 mil of Oromorph to manage my post-op pain. And I was in a terrible state. My colleagues in RRLP, I'm sure they were thinking of taking me on as a patient. I was almost psychotic. I couldn't, I was all over the place. It was awful. And I just felt I'm not being listened to. Because purely, it was awful. And people, a lot of ethnic minorities have sensitivities to different medication. Part of that is because most of the drug trials are done on white middle-class males and not on women, ethnic minorities, and so on. But to totally ignore me when I'm a healthcare professional with a lot of 30 years experience as a nurse, and not being listened to. A lot of people, doesn't matter what their ethnicity is, know their bodies. They know how they react to things. They've had them before, and they really, really should. And it's just an example of how people should be listened to, because it was 6 days. It was horrible. It really was horrible. I felt totally out of control.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it definitely reinstate some of your findings, Tony, about that mismatch of experience and people feeling dismissed and that their needs are assumed.
And if I'm being dismissed as a healthcare professional, how does somebody who's not a healthcare professional in that position feel?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I guess there's definitely a link between then these feelings of distrust.
Mm-hmm.
that come from that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry about your experience.
No, it's fine. I worked in that hospital, and when the minute I was back on duty, they didn't half get their ears chewed off, I can tell you.
Well, I'm glad you're empowered. You feel empowered to do that, absolutely. Whereas some people wouldn't. So no, it's good that you're able to give that feedback, and hopefully, work like this. The theme of Black History Month this year is action, not words. So I feel like, a lot of this work and the work we're showcasing tonight, it's time that it is put into action. And there is now, a lot of evidence, including this, that is backing up the need, that we do need to actually start changing. And I think, I have a question, but I wanted to open it up to everyone else as well, because I know I'm the host, so I can sneak it in before everyone else. But has anyone else got any questions or comments that they'd like to make? Yes, Joy.
Hi, Tony. Nice hearing that. Great work. So I was going to ask you, Tony, do you intend to roll this out to other aspects of information source? Because you kind of just focused on the healthcare aspect of it, them going to the GPs and healthcare professionals to get this information. From personally, I know that we go other places to get information. So do you intend to explore those other places they get all this information from?
Yeah, to answer that question is we did again, like I said, I have transcripts and transcripts. Interviews lasted an hour plus. It's just that again, I was trying to skim through things because most of the sources were the sources of information. Most of them were again GP, internet, health, and family and friends. There's some people who just said plain out experimentation. They'll go to their GP, get a recommendation, then run it through their grandmother first. Again, there's a lot of power dynamics in families we have to respect. For example, there in certain cultures, if you're a married woman, then you can't just make certain decisions. And again, you have to run your health decision through other people. So there was a lot of sources of information, but primarily the top ones were the GP, internet, social media, health, family and friends, and their I say experimentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you, Joy. And Dillian, would you like to come in?
Thank you for that presentation, Tony. My question, it can be for across the room, anybody can answer, but if misinformation is out there or there isn't the necessary information that someone is inquiring about, so you've gone to the GP, you've gone to the hospital to find out more information, what's the consensus, or what do people feel about would you rather have someone tell you, listen, I don't have the answers, or would you just let them go and find answers for themselves, like, you know, to be, I don't know how to explain it, but like to kind of just be at their own role, like, you know, just to find their answers on their own, because I just feel like misinformation it plays such a big impact in the way we make decisions, as Tony has mentioned. But I think, what do we want the truth? And the truth being, okay, listen, I'm a health professional, I actually don't have the answers for this. I can come back to you at a later time, or just leave the patient or whoever's asking to just go and Google something for themselves.
Again, a very good question. Part of again, I covered elements of that in the recommendations of this study, because again, in the COVID era, we've had to figure things out as we go. So there is no shame in saying, I don't have this information for you. However, if you give me some time, I'll go find it out and then give the information back to you. There is no shame in that. But again, because of this power dynamic where the doctor feels like they have to have all information, the healthcare worker needs to, like, I can't say I don't know, otherwise the patients won't trust me. There is no shame in saying I don't know at this time, or this is my recommendation. It's like, even forget COVID, in this age where we have malignancies and cancers, where we don't have certain cures for everything else, if a patient has either concerns or just general questions, I would prefer someone tell me, first of all, I don't have a straight answer. However, these are your options, and then let's weigh these options. And if I still don't have a proper answer about something that is very specific, if you leave us with the information contact, I will contact my few colleagues. Let's say you need that. I will consult with a few colleagues, let's say in a different institution, find out what their protocols are, and then I'll get back to you, and then we can move on forward. Because I would rather someone be open than they straight out lie to me. Because if they give me a recommendation that will not work, then I'll go home. I'll go home, take the tablet, or undergo a very risky surgery for where the benefit does not cover where the benefit of this big procedure is not entirely worth it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that question, Janine, and the answer, Tony. I think it's a complex one, but I think again, and we could probably speak about that all night in itself. But yeah, like you said, your outcomes focused on transparency, having that open and honest dialogue that's linked to trust. So no, all amazing. Like I said, I've took 2 pages of notes. I've already learned so much. I've taken so much back. So I'm just conscious of time. So we're going to move on to our next speaker now. But I just want to thank you so much, Tony. And yeah, please do stay for the rest if we have time. I'm sure we can have more questions at the end.
I was just say one thing, Tony. Is it possible for you to send me your slides? I work for Knots HC rather than NUH. My email, sarah.blanchard, is at the top of the chat.
Yeah, I've got your email address from our prior conversations, so I can ensure that it's sent to everyone. If you're happy, Tony, we can send it to everyone.
I'm dyslexic. I find note-taking quite hard.
Yeah, it's understandable. So don't worry. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. Don't worry about taking notes because we are recording it and we will send out any of the presenters' slide decks as well.
Thank you.
I've signed up. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much, and we'll move on to our next speaker. So that is Salome, who is a nurse in clinical hematology. No slides this time. We're mixing up a little bit, so we're just going to speak from the heart, aren't we? So if that's okay, I believe you're going to be speaking about your journey through research and what Black History Month means to you. So if it's okay, I will hand over to yourself.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name is Salome. I work in the clinical hematology research. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, how far I've come, and what I'm doing at the moment. So I came to England in 2001 after qualifying as a general nurse in Zambia. And when I came here, I did my adaptation course for about 6 months. During that time, I worked as a care assistant till I got my registration in September of 2001. So whilst waiting for my registration, I worked in a nursing home, which was very, very challenging because back home we never had nursing homes. So this was very new to me. And when I got my PIN number, I just couldn't cope working in the nursing home. So I applied for a Band 5 job at the Queen's Medical Center. So I started Queen's Medical Center on the hematology unit. It was a general ward by then in 2002. So 2002 to 2005, I worked at Queen's Medical Center. Then I applied to come to City Hospital and joined the bone marrow transplant unit. So I worked from 2005 to 2018 on the bone marrow transplant unit. Very busy ward, very hectic. You had to be strong to stay on the ward, but I enjoyed the experience. It was just so fulfilling when you see patients being diagnosed the first time, and then you treat them, and then they go home. Then they come back for a transplant. You see them at their worst, and then when they just go back home, it was just so fulfilling. But that was a lot of years, 15 years. I said I needed a change. So I didn't know where to go next. But I met a friend who worked in research. As you are aware, research is not well known anywhere. Nurses don't know about research. If you ask anyone about research, they just think, oh, you spend your time on your computer or you go out to look for people to recruit into trials. So they told me a little bit about research. So, well, I'll try and join you. Thankfully, there was a vacancy in hematology. So I applied for that job, and I knew a lot of people worked there, and I was confident that they will look after me. So and I got the job in 2018, December. And it's the best decision that I made. Yeah, joining the research. So I've been in research now nearly 4 years. I've enjoyed the experience, and I ran my own trials. And an opportunity came last year where I could upgrade myself to do a degree. So I took it with both hands. Of course, Joy was encouraging me before that you can do it. So I applied for a degree, which I'm finishing next March. So I'm doing a project at the moment, and my project is I'm looking at an evaluation of diversity in clinical trials and strategies to improve participation among Africans and Caribbeans in hematology context. Since I've been in hematology, I've only seen a handful of people from the African Caribbean descent in trials. So of course, I've done some literature research. I know some of the reasons, but it's important to know the reason, to ask the people themselves, why are they not participating in these trials? So that's how I came up and say, I'll take up this project as my final dissertation and see and ask the people themselves. So this is what I'm doing at the moment. That's why partly I couldn't share my any slides or anything, because I've just done my proposal and I haven't gathered any information yet. But then what does Black History Month mean to me? To me, it's hearing from proud role models that have exemplary experience, enough excellence to sorry, have I gone away?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So I'm saying hearing from proud role models that exemplify excellence, and enough excellence to earn their place in history books, and they're marveling at the rich heritage and history of Black people, both from within our communities and globally. This is either present or the past. So, to me, with the theme which is now enough has been talked about, so we need to see actions. That's one of the main reasons why I'm looking at this project, because a lot of things have been said about why Black people don't enroll into trials. We've seen with the COVID pandemic, as Tony has said, we saw the apathy from the African, most of the ethnic minority groups not taking up vaccines, not engaging into trials. So I would like to know more. So my aim really for my project is to explore diversity role in clinical trials among the people from the African and Caribbean descent. And I want to look at the strategies that can lead to certain improvement in the recruitment of African and Caribbean people. I'm just looking into hematology. I'm not going very far because this is just an academic purposes. Unless if you want me to come back and share my results, I'll be willing. And my objective for this project is assessing perception of clinical trials among Africans and Caribbeans. Number 2 is identifying barriers to recruitment into clinical trials. Number 3 is identifying facilitators of recruitment. and then identifying strategies that can lead to certain improvement in the recruitment of this group or population. And I'll do a qualitative method. My method will be qualitative. So I have a few people who are very willing to give me information. So I've identified probably 30 people who are very willing to give me information of their reasons why they can't participate into trials. Yeah. So that's all I had to say. And probably I would ask people who work or who have worked in research what they think is the barriers to people from these groupings, why they can't enroll in trials.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I will open up the floor to that discussion in a second. But I just wanted to say, yes, you will absolutely be invited back to give your results. We'd be delighted. Yeah. Oh, there we go. It's a clappy reaction again. So thank you so much. That's, just to hear about your journey. Oh, yeah, more. Everyone's clapping. There we go. So thank you so much. I mean, very inspiring journey into research, but then that your journey is continuing still, and I think that is a very important research project. So we'll be delighted to hear and support you throughout. But that's not from me. So Tony, you've got your hand up. So would you like to come in?
Again, thank you for that chat and talk. It's good to hear your story. It's I'm also like you. I would want it to get where people of color are not, especially in research position, where I'd like for it to get where they're not case studies but a pattern. If you know what I mean, because right now it's a handful of people in very specific positions. If you can literally count them nationally. So until it gets to that point where it's a pattern of people of color getting certain positions, then I'll be that would be a great day. And to sort of I am contributing to your answer as opposed to answering your answer. So during my research project, basically I've had to read a lot about health information and ethnic minorities, and some of that information involves things to do with clinical trials. First of all, there's already a pre-existing lack of trust between authorities and healthcare providers and the ethnic people of ethnic groups. There's a lot of studies that were done unethically to people of color. So that does not just go away, and trust has to be built over a period of time. And that's why we have a very specific population a very specific population participating in clinical trials, because they know their interests will be well looked after. As an ethnic minority, that answer is never quite clear. And then as opposed to saying not black people rather, but people of color refuse to participate. There's also a lot of factors. Do they have the right information? Do they actually know that these clinical trials are going on? Can we get the right information to the right people? Because if, as a layman, if I hear it's a clinical trial, and this is where sometimes you just have to realize our privilege in terms of position. Majority of the people in this chat are healthcare workers or are healthcare related. So when someone says clinical trials, we all sort of have an idea of what that means. But to someone who's lay, when you break down clinical trial, it's basically an experimentation. And very few people want to be experimented on. So if we get the right information, tell them, yes, it is an experiment, but over and above, it doesn't take anything away from your care. You're still getting the care that you would have gotten anyway. And in the process of doing so, we get to know if we give people like you this drug, what will happen. So you're not just doing it for yourself, you're even doing it for your generations to come. So it's just learning how to communicate. And that's why platforms like this are really, really key. And what the job that Kate Frost does is really important, public patient involvement, because it's in such forums where if we can get us a round table like this with community leaders and just lay people who have little to nothing to do with healthcare, and just get this open discussion, and because there will be a lot of concerns. So because my grandfather was experimented on in this recent study against his will, he was denied treatment, blah, blah, blah. So it's just, again, a lot of trust has to be built.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Just adding on, yeah, trust has to be built. In hematology, we are dealing with a lot of, it's mostly cancers. And then we've got like things like sickle cell disease, found mainly in the Africans. So cancer, we are not really experimenting. We are giving them another option of treatment, which probably is not on the standard of care. It's only found on the trials. So people are missing out on having actually a good treatment, which might prolong their life or probably heal them or just make their life comfortable. So with that, I understand about information and everything else. But really, to me, is really getting the reasons, the pertinent reasons why we haven't broken through. Because we've heard about the syphilis trials, what happened in the past, and there are guidelines now. So it's really understanding what's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all admit research has a dark history across the board, but I completely agree with everything that's been said today, and I think it speaks volume across our whole society. I come from an old mining town, and if I try and explain to people what my job is in a low socioeconomic class environment, no one understands what I do, even though I'm trying to explain it. How do I explain it to my parents? And I explain it to everyone the same, even professors. So I think it's actually speaking to each other like humans. And I think, Tony, what you just said there speaks volumes for me as well. When we can get caught up in our own environments and our own terminology, but just the word clinical research, and let's think about how we're actually explaining this to people. And so it is understandable and it is accessible. I mean, I could speak about this all night, and I know, Joy, you've had your hand up for a while, so I apologize. Please come in, and Pamela, I'll keep you after.
So I was just going to add a little bit to what everyone said. Thank you, Salome, for that. That was really great. And I've been doing a lot of work lately going out. I think to get people into it, in research, we wait for them to come to us out, don't we? We wait for them to come to us. I think it's get to a stage now where we actually need to go to them. And when we go to them, that's when we form those relationships and kind of break those, what will I call it now? Like break the ice, so to speak, because every religion and every traditional, whatever cultural background you got some of these things that we dare not go there kind of thing. So you just have to be in the mix to spread the word and to kind of really break in. So yeah, cancer treatment, hematology, yeah, they are first, I don't want to say first class, they're new generational medications that you won't get on NHS standard care, most of them. But for them to say yes, they ought to have heard it outside the walls of the hospital first. Not necessarily the trial itself, but the word research. I've thought about research, and the next comment I heard in the room was, I don't want to be guinea pig. So we really, and I was like, oh yeah, thank goodness you said that. This is not guinea pig thing, it's not experimental. So I had the opportunity to actually go in So I think we need to be moving out of the hospital walls a little bit and start going to people. That's when they will tell us. They won't tell us when they come to see us, because some of them being in that hospital environment makes them really tensed already. There is that anxiety already. But if you go to them in their familiar environment, you'll be amazed what people say. So I think we need to go more to them, kind of start breaking the ice and forming this relationship before we can truly understand the full context of why people are engaging, why they are not engaging, what kind of study they might engage in and stuff like that. I just want to quickly add that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's so it's such an important point. Going outside the four walls of the hospital and let's build relationships with these communities and get out there in the mix. And I think that's speaks to actions, not words, as well, doesn't it? So, Sarah, I can see your hands up as well. I'm very conscious of time now because Joy hasn't spoken yet, and this happens at every event I do, and I try so hard to keep the time. So I do want to give Joy, obviously, opportunity to do her presentation. I apologize if no one can stay an extra 10-15 minutes, but it is being recorded, so we'll make sure that it goes out to everyone. So sorry, do you want to come in quickly with a comment or question, and then we will hand over to...
I just wondered why and Salome hadn't included Asian people. Is there not as big a problem in the Asian community as in the Afro-Caribbean community?
Yeah, we've got plenty of Asian people in the hematology, but this is just a project for my degree course. So
it's fine. I was just curious, Salome.
I was just looking at a small number of people because this will take me like so many years or so. Yeah, we've got plenty. Yeah.
Oh, good.
No, great question, and I think it is such a broad area, isn't it? And there are a lot of health inequalities across every condition that we need to address. So I think any work that anyone is doing, and I mean the work you're doing, Salome, is huge in itself. I think even with narrowing it down to there. So before I hand over to Joy, I'm just getting your slides up. Sorry, Joy. I just want to thank you so much, and we will be delighted to invite you back, and let's keep in contact in any way that we can help and support in what you're doing. Then yeah, please do let us know. Okay, so final presentation. So sorry that we're late, but really interesting conversations. So I'm going to hand over to Joy now, who is one of our clinical research practitioners in research and innovation, and is going to be speaking to us about the work you've been doing about these exploratory conversations about healthcare research and ethnic minority underrepresentation in research. So if you want to introduce yourself, Joy, I'll just get the slides up for you. Sorry.
Okay. So can I start?
Yep, go for it. They're just loading.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joy Agbomandolo. I am a senior research officer at Nottingham University Hospital. I work with a rapid response team now. And today, I thought before I go into the exploratory conversations, I just want to quickly talk about the clinical research practitioner role and the forum that we've come up with, and how through this role, how I've been able to kind of see firsthand the underrepresentation of ethnic minority communities in research. Kate, can I have the next slide, please? So before I go into the forum, I would like to just talk briefly about the clinical practitioner role. So who are we? So we're made up of anyone who works in research delivery and do not have like a statutory registration, like a nurse or a midwife or a physiotherapist. So everyone in research delivery in a patient-facing role is a research practitioner, and we are now in accredited register. So in NUH we've got 15% of the CRP workforce is actually registered with the Academic for Healthcare Science, and 70% is on the NIHR directory, and the band ranges from 3 to 7. So what do we do? So in research, our role in research delivery is to support, is to lead, and is to deliver. So we support research studies, all sorts of research study. We lead on research study, all sorts as well. And we deliver, we meet patients and tell them about these studies. Personally, I first started my research journey with clinical hematology team, and I was the research data clerk at that point. And so I worked with Salome closely and and the team as a whole. And it kind of really exposed me to the world of research. Then after that for a few years, I moved on to a research practitioner role that I'm not in. And in this role as a research practitioner, I've worked on COVID research. I've done renal research. I'm doing respiratory research. Like, I've done a few bits around the block. So it's really exciting, because through this work, I've kind of seen, especially during the pandemic, I kind of really realized how people who look like me or from other ethnic minority background don't really engage in research. I can remember then, really at the height of the pandemic, where you get this screening list and you can easily tell who's going to say no to you. And 95% of the time, it is. They'll say no. So that really got me thinking. And so when I moved on from COVID, got into renal research, and there was this opportunity they were looking for to train up people from ethnic minority background to kind of take a career pathway to become clinical academics. And I've just said, yeah, that's for me. So I took that on. I'm currently on this pre-doctoral fellowship. So that's really given me enough time to really dive into research, to really know for sure why, not necessarily why, it's kind of looking at how to kind of enable people to engage. And what I'm doing is not wait for them to come to me in the hospital. I'm actually going to them and going to different communities to have these conversations, to kind of learn from them, learn from people. I've met with Indian communities, Caribbean communities. I've had different interviews with people from across the board as well, to just kind of have an understanding of why we're not really engaging in research and how we can improve this. Kate, can I have the next slide, please? Oh, so a bit of the CRP thing now, like clinical research practitioner. So we launched a forum in 2021, and we now have like a clear objectives and a clear aims, and we're really, really supported heavily by our R&I managers. So I think from my perspective, what really changed the career for research practitioners is the role we really played in delivering research. We were supporting on CTEM studies, and we were leading on the non-CTEM. So CTEM involves drugs, all those drugs like recovery study where we're trying different drugs to see if they can help treat COVID. And we were supporting in those studies. Then the non-CTEM ones are those that you don't give drugs. So that's the one the practitioners were really leading on, and we're really kind of recruiting people into all these studies. I had a count one time. I think I might have recruited touching 100 people into these studies across the board. So yeah, so I think that was a turning point. And one thing that we're doing now as CRP Forum at NUH is to go out to what's it called, career events, and really talk about research. And we've been to a few across the board, and there was one particular one I went for, and I had a look at, like I said, I had a look at the manual that the NHS provide, the career manual that they provide. And I was really surprised there was no research in there. We actually went there to go talk about research practitioners, our role in research delivery, and how people can engage in research as a career and also as a potential research participant. And also another thing that is common in research is that researchers at the higher bands now, that like independent researchers, there is a lack of minority group in it as well. So that's another thing that is kind of affecting the overall research involvement from this ethnic minority communities. So yeah, we went talking about research careers and all of those things, and I've come to talk about research, and the booklet I'm being given, no research is mentioned in it. So how do you really preach research to people, even as a career option or even as a participant in it? So those are the things that we've been looking at and really trying to see, although they said some work is being done, and that they plan to improve that hopefully at some point next year. So these are the things that we've really been looking at, really trying to develop the research practitioner workforce as a workforce, and also develop independent researchers within this workforce that will kind of spread research and do research as an independent researcher. So the next slide will take me into looking at healthcare research. So at NUH, research is a core part of what we do, and we hope that through research we can save lives, we can develop better treatments, and we can improve outcomes. But like I said earlier, participation from ethnic minority population across all specialty now, because I've worked in a few, whether hematology, whether renal research, whether COVID research, whether respiratory research that I've been involved in, the ethnic minority participants is really low, and there is a link actually. There is this I've cited here, this paper. If you have time, you can read it. All the references are just below there, where there is actually a link between negative healthcare experience and racial discrimination to lack of ethnic minority community, like we've discussed before. Like Salome asked earlier, why are people not engaging in this? These are one of the reasons. Yeah, there is a lack of trust, but their experience, their lived experiences also have an impact in whether they would decide to take part or not, or even engage in the conversation in the first place. So we all know that there are implications of super diversity for health and research. Like the UK is a super diverse community, and that is health has its impact, and it is our responsibilities as healthcare providers to actually let people know. And from my conversations, what I understand is they tend to listen more to people who look like them than people who don't. So it is our responsibility to let people understand that there are implications, and COVID has shown us a little bit of that. And even before COVID, there was some research about diabetes that came out to say that the threshold that they used for everyone didn't really fit some ethnic minority communities, like Asian, for example. They generalized what threshold for, I think, for obesity, and the way the whole diabetes treatment went, it didn't really fit. There was paper around that. So it's just about letting people know that we really need to engage in research so that whatever treatment comes up will be suitable for us as well. So I think if we look at it at a different lens, people might kind of try to start engaging. So, and the next slide I want to talk about is, like, why does inclusivity in research matter? So I would like to open that question to everyone, even though I put some points here like medical science and social justice and public health. Why does it really matter? I would really like to hear your views as well on this. And I've put some point here of why I think it matters. You know, it matters so that we can easily generalize findings. It matters so we can find better diagnosis and treatment. It matters so that when it even comes to allocating resources, it does matter. So we really need to let people know, yes, there is a horrible history about research. But now that's why we've got GCP to ensure that every single research is done to the highest standard, and that the well-being of the participant is at the heart of everything. And they can opt out as well. So we really need to kind of let people know why it matters, because at the end of the day, is kind of have like a general impact on public health as well. The next, just ponder on that, because I would really like to hear views on why that really matters. So do
you want to go into that now, Joy? Would you
yeah,
like to open it
we
up?
could do, yeah, because yeah, we could.
Yeah.
Why do you think it matters? Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah, go on. Sorry. Please continue.
When I started to do my degree, which I didn't finish because I moved trusts and the cost to move universities was phenomenal. But I started doing research. It was medication and ethnic minorities was what I did for that particular section of the degree. And what I found, I did a big research kind of search. It is a few years ago. Things may have changed. And what I was getting from all the bits of research that have been done about medication and ethnic minorities, not enough research. And this is all the way. And when I tried to, I was looking at, obviously I'm psychiatry. So I was looking at, we're often accused of over-sedating Afro-Caribbean people. But one of the things that people were saying in these bits of research I was looking at is that a lot of ethnic minorities are more susceptible to the effects of a lot of medications, particularly the antipsychotics. And what I wanted to do was look at something like, with older people and antipsychotics, we start on half adult doses. And maybe that's what we need to be doing with Afro-Caribbean and Asians, so that we're not inadvertently over-sedating them. That in fact, we're giving them proper titrated measured doses. So if we're starting from a lower dose, and I think what you're saying from your last slide, this is one of the reasons, particularly in psychiatry, Afro-Caribbeans and Asians are very negative about things because the drugs that we've been giving them wipe them out. But if you gave the same dose to a white person, it would have a more therapeutic effect. And I think that perhaps in the research we need to be looking more at the benefits. If we can say to people, look, what we're looking at is not over-sedating you, and the benefit would be that you'd have a therapeutic dose of the medication, but you wouldn't be over-sedated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I would love to do that research. And when I took it to the chief pharmacist, I thought, we'll have to get the drug companies involved, and we'll have to do this, and we'll have to do that, and it's very expensive, and I don't know that we get the funding for it. And I'm thinking, what? It would ultimately save the NHS money if we used half doses and kept people on much lower doses of these. And they are heavy duty drugs. They really are. The side effects are potentially horrendous. Mm-hmm. And, it's it would save the NHS money because we'd be using less drugs. It would be better for the people that we're working with, and they would perhaps be a bit more relaxed when we start saying, we'd like to try this drug with you. This is the dose we'll be starting you on. It's a very low dose. It's just to see if you can tolerate it, if it's effective. I think that would be far better, and I think we get a better outcome. Certainly in psychiatry, obviously it's very different in general medicine. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. I think it's a really incredible, tangible example, I think, of what, the importance of ensuring that, if we are just giving, it's the kind of like equity, or when we talk about equality, what does that mean to people? But it's different for people. We need to personalize treatment to our different patient populations. So like you said, we may do studies specifically with children and young people, and adults, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at the different demographics and the different effects of these drugs. So yeah, so it's all too familiar, too much like hard work by the sounds of it when you took that.
Yeah, I just got blanked. It was awful. I felt, you know, we're getting these complaints, and we do, and I've done psychiatry for 30 years, and the complaints we've had from ethnic minorities: you're giving me too much, you're giving me more than you would that person, you're over sedating me, I'm not having that drug anymore. It's not good, because they then end up with, you know, some of the psychotic illnesses. The effects are horrendous.
No, it's fascinating. Thank you so much for that contribution. I think is it Salome? Did you have your hand up as well? I think do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Sarah said, because we are all made genetically different, and the way we metabolize drugs or anything is quite different. So the research, really, like the drug companies, should bear that in mind and encourage diversity into trials, so that everyone, whatever the results we get, is generalized to everyone than just to one group of people.
Mm-hmm. Very, very well put there. Much better, I think, than I tried to summarize. Thank you, Salome. Really appreciated. So, yes, anyone else would like to add about what diversity means to them, why it's important, or shall we carry on? No. Okay, let's carry on. We can. Sorry, Joy. Are we on the right slide?
Yes, we're on the right slide. So yeah, this just kind of, thank you everyone for the contribution. So this kind of just leads into this. So so I've said exploratory conversations with ethnic minority communities. So now we're talking about getting everyone involved in barriers. We know the barriers. Personally, I've read a few papers and everyone keeps going on about barriers and stuff. So I just thought for one moment, what about if I go to these people, will they actually say anything? And that's what I've kind of really got myself doing this few months, like really going to that. It's really hard. And I'm meeting another community tomorrow. It's hard because I know when I go there, first, nobody will want to say anything first because they're trying to size you up. And after they kind of say, okay, we can open up. And when they open, everyone really come for it. They go for it. So I thought, okay, to have these conversations, if I stay in my office to wait for the next patient who meets my inclusion and exclusion criteria to come up, I probably won't get to these people that really need hearing to actually get what it is that is not making them engage, because inclusivity is really important. I think that's one of the things that we didn't get with the risk and the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, like Anthony was explaining earlier. We really need as much as possible to be involved in it. If I look at some of there was this drugs study I led on, yeah, and when I think that was one of the things that actually drove me to do like a service evaluation in the first place. I looked at, we had over 200 patients on that study. I looked at how many minority that were in it. It wasn't great. When I did the service evaluation, it was only 14% minority that took on the survey. And when you say ethnic minority, 14%, that's actually broken down into different ethnic minorities. By the time you break it out, it's actually, because we're so culturally different, it's really, really, really low. So I think it's the next step from what I'm thinking is meeting ethnic minority communities at their comfort zone, in their comfort environment, and where they are free, they've got their friends around, and we can all just have like this informal chat about what research is. Oh, there was this one, I went to this community and after I introduced myself and I was like, can anyone tell me what research is? It was like, what? Oh, I said, have you ever been taking part in some research? No. So it was like, going back to drawing board for me, because I went there to talk about how can we enable you to engage. Can you tell me how you feel about research and how do we help you? It just went to the discussion went to ABC of what research is, and I had to really go to, COVID when it came. We didn't know anything about it, and through research, we are not able to treat it. We now have vaccines, and we're not living the pandemic, or we're not living a normal life now, back to what it used to be. So I think going to these people, these communities, and really having the chat, these conversations. There are loads of language barriers. I've seen it since I've been going about. I've needed people to interpret that I didn't really experience while I was in the hospital setting, because it's really easy that when people come to the hospital, even if they're not really fluent in English, they'll probably have some family member with them that just kind of help. But when they're in that community, in their environment, they've gone to an environment of everyone speaks the same language kind of thing. They don't really need a family member who understands English to be there. So that's another thing I've noticed. And I think researchers, we need to be learning different cultures and understanding different views on research. We really need to really start listening to people. And when we start listening and learning about their way of life and how things work, that's when we can even be breaking into the zone of gaining trust. I want to zone it now. Trust can't be quantified. We can't measure it. The only way we can make people say relax and really trust it is when we are in their environment. It's not just like a one-off. That's another problem with research. Once my funding ends, what next? And this relationship I'm building, if I abandon it, if someone else picks this topic area up in 12 months' time, they are going to be like, oh, there was this Joy who was smiling, came last time, and she never came back again. And these are the things that people are saying as well when you're having these conversations. Researchers, you just come and pick our brain, off you go. But we really need to find a way of making sure that even if the research ends, there is a way to really keep the relationship going so that the trust that we've built can still be there. And the final point I put here was that make research equitable, not equality, don't make it equal. We need the equity, because there was this picture I really liked when they explained equity is when everyone was given the same footstool to step on, and there was a barrier in front. Only one person could actually see above the barrier. So I think it's knowing what different community needs and meeting that needs as much as we could, and that will make research more equitable for all. And maybe we can start seeing the inclusivity that we all want to see. And I think the next one is and these are the questions I just want people to ponder on. What is clinical research? What do you think about it? Have you ever taken part in it? What questions should researchers be asking, and how do we make it more accessible? And the final slides, I think, is questions and answers. And that's my contact if you want to get in touch. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kate, for this opportunity. Any questions, please? It's open now.
Wow. What a great way to summarize all of the conversations tonight. Yeah, really informative, really powerful. And I think the fact we've gone half an hour over the original planned time and everyone's still here who was here at the beginning says a lot. So thank you so much, Joy. We've got a few hands up and we've had a few comments in the chat. So I think it was Tony first, and then we'll go to Salome, if that's okay.
Thank you for that insightful presentation. So, as you finished, you said as you're talking about equity and equality, and what can we do to maintain these relationships. Again, I'll point out to the job that Kate Frost does. I think it's one of the most important jobs in research, because she is part of PPI groups are really, really important. Because you have to, from something that I've realized is, because we are going forward with this research, with my research projects. What I've noticed is I need I do need to, even though I look like my research participants, there's always a power dynamic. When I go into the field, when I go to interview them, I might look like you, but I have on my researcher hat. In as much as I'm black and I'm African, I have my researcher hat on. So when we visit these communities as researchers, we have to be cognizant of certain power dynamics, and again be respectful of the communities and cultures and everything, and how we maintain this relationship. Because first of all, they help people buy into the research. If I go to a PPA group meeting and I'm meeting, let's say, people from Afro-Caribbean community, I have to remember that in that environment, I am a guest. Even though I have come to do research, I have come to do my research project in that environment, I am a guest. So I have to be respectful of that environment in and of itself, and the privilege of them letting me in, and just doing research with this community as opposed to doing research on this community. Give them buy-in. Our project, we will be proceeding with PPA involvement. We as a researcher, you present, this is what my objectives are. This is what I think we need to know. They tell you, yes, what you want to know is important, and XYZ is also important to us. So it's more of a partnership than just a researcher going to collect data. You've given me your data, then I'm out. So it's a research. It's a partnership of giving. It's not giving and taking, but it's a partnership. If they say you can't interview me, then okay, what else can we do? If my study is qualitative methods and I need to interview you, and you say I can't interview the grandmother, what else can I do? Can I at least observe? So we have to be flexible, and don't as a researcher, we need not to dictate our terms. I will only interview you for an hour. If I come to your community group, first of all, for me, it's a privilege to be in that setting. I am a guest in your environment. This is what I want to do. If I can do this with you, it benefits me as a researcher, and it also benefits us all in terms of improving community and society. So we get more inclusivity, and first of all, it eliminates things like tokenism.
Mm-hmm.
And it also eliminates the feeling of being taken advantage of, because it's very easy to feel like the researchers only come to us when they need information, and once they get information, they're out. So if we are going to eliminate things like tokenism and people being used, we need to give them an equal equity in this kind of research we're doing, and that's where Kate comes in.
Well, I mean, all of that was like music to my ears. You see me like nodding, my head hurts, like neck hurts from nodding so much tonight. But I completely agree, and I think this should be embedded in everything. And I am very passionate about, rather than trying to get our communities to fit our research, we should be getting our research to fit our communities. We should be, like you've said, Joy, and what you spoke about, we should be going out to them, building trust with them. And ultimately, research can be very, very rigid in how we design it. But let's think differently. Let's think how we can make this accessible for people. Why are we doing or having the same designs that we've had for 20 years? We need to change the way we do things. So I'm a very strong believer in. And I think, this is the start of the conversations. I'm very, very, obviously very passionate about this area, as is everyone here. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here at 8 o'clock at night. So let's carry on the conversations, and we'll have more events and discussion and workshops like this as well. I just want to offer Salome a chance to speak, and then Naomi, you've put something in the chat, so I'll be interested if you want to comment any further on that as well. No pressure though, because I don't want to put you on the spot. So do you want to come in, Salome?
I thank you, Joy, for that. I just wanted to add on how probably we can increase awareness about research. When I did the literature review on the telephone consultation during the COVID pandemic, one of the things which was coming out about a lot was involving the media in the spreading of the word. When each time you looked around, there was stay at home, this COVID, that had a big impact on people adhering to the instructions. So probably if we engage the media, social media, all media outlets about research, maybe, just maybe, we can get somewhere with engagement of people, especially from the ethnic minority groups, with their clinical trials.
I mean, I think that's a fantastic point, and sad. I mean, yes, sad to say, if you look at any research innovation, social media, the majority of it's on Twitter. Why we use Twitter, I've got no idea. I didn't even use it before I took this job. I don't like it. So no, I think fantastic point. And again, we need to be doing more in rather than trying to get people to join us on Twitter. Where is everyone else seeking information from? Where are they going for peer-to-peer support? We need to be going to them rather than asking them to create a Twitter account and listen to our professional, jargon fueled tweets. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Salome. Sarah, you want to come in? Oh, yeah.
Following on from what Salome was saying about the media, I don't know if people are aware, I watched it, it was very good. David Harwood did a programme on COVID and ethnic minorities on BBC. I don't know if it's still on the iPlayer. And the thing he was asking, the whole issue we're talking about today, ethnic minorities and health. And it was a very good documentary. And he left the question at the end, what are we going to do? Now, maybe if celebrities like David Harwood are already actively involved, maybe we should be writing to David and saying, would you get involved? Would you support us? Would you help us? Because people will look at him. They may not look at me. I'm a 64-year-old mixed heritage woman who's a psychiatric nurse. And they're going to go, yeah. David Harwood says, I've been on a Section 3. I've had those psychotropic drugs and so on and so forth. And he actually felt that when he was sectioned, it was the right thing. He needed it at the time, which is very good to hear. But maybe we need to get people like him and David Olusoga involved because they're already activists and they're known and they're recognized. And maybe they can support us and help get that message out about research and the importance of being involved in research. And maybe people will listen because it's them rather than a nurse or a doctor.
I think it's a very, very interesting point you make. We know, influencers or people. I think you said, Tony, in your outcomes, people that look like you, speak, talk like you. If you saw someone who is very visible in society or a celebrity, would that have an influence on some communities? I think,
I'd happily send him an email. I have no qualms about doing that.
Don't put yourself down. I can feel like a revolution going. I mean, let's we'll get there. But no, really interesting point. I'd be interested to know what people thought about that. I mean, Joy, when you go out and speak to communities, I guess this is some of the conversations you're having with people about how we can do more. Yeah.
Can I just quickly say something? Now that you said that, there was this. I was having this chat, and then the man, after I've spoken, the whole idea say, so I went to sit down, and he came to me. I said instead of having this conversation, it was like it gave me a painted a picture. It said there was this man. He was from, let's say, the Caribbean, and he was in prison for whatever reason. So they were trying to examine if he was culturally intelligent or if it was culturally fit to be released or morally sound to be released or something like that. And they were asking him these weird questions like, what is the capital of Qatar? Or what's the capital of France? And all these weird questions, and he didn't have an idea what they were talking about. So it said, then someone asked them, how long have you been in the UK? He said, where are you from originally? He said, what part of that country are you from? He said it. What's the capital of that country? He said. Was the food common around your area of origin? Then he said as well. Then he told me something, that the questions that you ask really matters. That if you design your question as a researcher, was giving me this piece of advice which I really loved. Your question should be designed in a way that it actually suits the people. That if you ask a question that is wide, like a very broad question, people won't have a clue what you're talking about. But if you narrow it down to be specific to them, then you will have a more fruitful result. He said, I was like, wow. So actually, we really need, there's so many layers to this. And I think from a research design perspective now, going forward, I think my research design is going to be really different. So, yeah, I think we really need to be looking into every single tiny details.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think God, it's turned into a bit of a think tank tonight's session, hasn't it? We're flying. Right. So I know this is probably the worst I've ever been at sticking to time. I really apologise. This is actually a record for me, I think. But I just want to, I know, Naomi, you have commented in the chat, and I wanted to offer you before we leave, an opportunity to come and make any questions. Don't feel obliged. Because I thought you did put something very interesting in the chat. So
okay, thank you. Hi everyone. Thanks to the presentations and talks so far. It's been really great. So Joy, you asked us why inclusivity in research matters, and to me, I feel that inclusivity in research is linked to conducting collaborative or co-produced research with participants. I think that when you do that, as Tony said, it becomes more of a partnership, and it's kind of mutually beneficial for the researcher and also the participants, because the participants are able to get involved in the research design. And they can, learn new skills, have development opportunities, perhaps be involved in data collection, data analysis. And I suppose that links into what you just spoke about, Joy, as well, making sure that your research questions are kind of relevant and will get the responses that you want. If you're involving participants and being inclusive in the research design stages, you're more likely, hopefully, to generate research that is useful and that will really benefit the communities that you are researching. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really important comment there. I know it gives a shout out to patient involvement, so I appreciate that. But we know we've got a lot of work to do, but no, really important comment. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to stop. The session, otherwise I'll probably be here until tomorrow morning. So yeah, finally, I just want to thank everyone. I think this is the start of a conversation, and would people like, just for nodding or shaking, would you like to see another event like this focused on this topic?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll make that happen. And yeah, just thank you so much to everyone who's attended and to all our speakers for sharing your work. Such incredible work. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out more and exploring this more, and let's, actions, not words. So let's continue with that, not just in the month of October, but should be, all the time embedded in everything. So thank you. I will be sending the recording out, also the slides, and also a feedback form for you to give us some feedback for continuous improvement. So I'll let everyone go. Enjoy what is now left of your evening.
Not much left.
So yeah, apologies again. Thanks so much, and I'll see you all soon. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.